in the heart of Ibadan, where the red dust never quite settles and the scent of akara fills the air every morning, stood a quiet government school on the edge of the Bodija Shah community. The school had broken ceilings, faded chalkboards, and the kind of staff room where the kettle never worked unless you hit it twice. But in that humble building, Miss Teniola Adebayo, or Miss Tenny as students called her, was something of a legend. At 34, she was the English and literature teacher. She wore neatly pressed Ankara skirts, gold-rimmed glasses, and spoke with the kind of refined voice that made students sit up straight. Rumor had it, as she once taught at a private school in Lagos but left after a bad breakup. Others said she never married because she was too in love with her books. She lived alone in a flat 2 streets away, always came to school with a flask of hot tea, and corrected essays with red ink and fierce honesty. Then came David Ayula, a transfer student from a troubled school in Abeokuta. David was 18, technically legal, but still in SS2. He was tall, soft-spoken, with a scar above his left eyebrow and a talent for writing. Not just good, brilliant. On his first day, he handed in an essay that made Teniola pause. It wasn't just the grammar, it was the soul. He wrote about loss, hunger, ambition, and it felt like he'd lived 10 lives already. That day, after class, she called him aside. "You wrote this?" she asked, eyes narrowing behind her glasses. "Yes, ma." She studied him. "Where did you learn to write like this?" "My uncle has books. I read when the power is out." She didn't smile, but something in her chest shifted. Over the weeks, Teniola began to pay more attention to David. She gave him extra reading assignments: Achebe, Soyinka, Chimamanda, and asked him to come sat after school for tutoring. At first, it was professional. They met in the library on Wednesdays. The air was thick with dust and old books. They talked about metaphors, characterization, and plot structure. She praised his talent, but pushed him harder than anyone else. One day, he asked, "Why do you care so much, Ma?" She replied, "Because people like you don't get noticed until it's too late." From then on, their sessions grew longer. Sometimes they laughed, sometimes they argued about poems. One time, David brought her bolly and groundnut as a gift. She almost scolded him, but instead, she took it. "You shouldn't be giving your teacher gifts," she said. "Maybe I'm giving it to the woman, not the teacher." She froze. He realized his mistake, or maybe it wasn't a mistake, but she said nothing. Rain was heavy that afternoon. The school had closed early. Most students had gone. Teniola stayed behind to finish marking scripts. David returned to retrieve a forgotten novel. He knocked, then entered. She was soaked in thought, glasses off, hair down, red pen in hand. "You came back?" "Yes, Ma, I forgot purple hibiscus." He moved closer. She looked up. That silence stretched. Neither of them spoke for almost 30 seconds. But everything was said in that moment, and then, without a word, he kissed her. It wasn't a long kiss, but it happened. She pulled away, shocked, at him, at herself. "Get out," she whispered, her voice trembling. Now, she didn't report him. She didn't scold him again, but she also didn't stop seeing him. Their next meetings weren't in the school anymore. They met near Agodi Gardens. Sometimes she would drive him home. Sometimes they sat in her car, just talking. But one thing led to another. A hand held too long. A late-night text. A lie told to a neighbor. And soon they crossed the line again. And again. Teniola tried to justify it to herself. "He's 18. He's smart. He understands me." But the guilt ate her alive. She began making mistakes, forgetting to submit reports, snapping at colleagues. Parents began to whisper. And then, one morning, a phone was found. Another student had taken David's phone, trying to prank him. Instead, he found the text. Screenshots spread like wildfire. The principal called her in. The PTA demanded answers. Teniola denied it at first, called it fabrication. But David, under pressure, confessed, not out of anger, out of love. He thought if he told the truth, they would understand. They didn't. She was arrested, not because of his age, but for professional misconduct and abuse of power. She lost her teaching license. She was dragged on Facebook, on WhatsApp groups, on local blogs. Her siblings refused to speak to her. Her landlord evicted her. David? His parents pulled him out of school and sent him to live with relatives in Kaduna. They never saw each other again. Teniola lived quietly in Ilorin, working as a proofreader for a local publisher. She stopped wearing her glasses, stopped reading poetry. One afternoon, she walked into a bookshop. And there, on the shelf, was a novel titled The Woman Who Taught Me Fire by David Ayula. She opened it. In the first chapter, she read this. There was a woman once. She taught me words. Then she gave me silence. And in that silence, I became a man. She bought the book, walked home, and read it under a mango tree. Tears ran down her face. This brings us to the end of this story. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel and turn on notifications for more videos.